The courtroom was alive with the usual hum of anticipation. Can you imagine the tension in the air? Lawyers rustled papers like a symphony of nervous energy. Spectators whispered in hushed tones as if sharing secrets that could change everything. And the distant sound of a gavel striking echoed from another chamber like a heartbeat of justice itself. Judge Eleanor Hayes sat at the bench, her gaze steady and professional, exuding the calm authority she'd honed over years. It was another day, another case or so, she thought. The bailiff's voice cut through the buzz, loud and clear. The state of Louisiana versus James Anderson. Eleanor shifted slightly in her seat, her hands resting on the polished oak of the bench, feeling its cool smoothness under her fingertips. She glanced at the charges in front of her: assault, robbery, resisting arrest, and, oh, how that familiar ache of disappointment settled deep in her chest. Another lost soul tangled in the system, she mused, her heart heavy with the weight of it all. But then, when the defendant was brought in, her world didn't just tilt. It spun right off its axis. The man standing before her, shackled at the wrists and ankles, wasn't some stranger off the street. No, it was James Anderson, her James. Her throat tightened, nearly choking her with emotion as a flood of memories surged forward like a tidal wave. Those endless summer afternoons they'd spent racing bicycles down the dusty, sun-scorched streets of Hammond, Louisiana, laughing until their sides hurt. The late-night talks under the sprawling magnolia tree in her backyard, its sweet scent wrapping around them like a promise. The vows they'd made as kids, wide-eyed and fearless, to always have each other's backs, no matter what. How could she ever forget that? But this man standing before her, he wasn't the boy she remembered. His shoulders were hunched, burdened by years she couldn't fathom, his face lined with the scars of hardship. Yet those eyes, those deep, soulful eyes, were they still the same? Unmistakable, piercing right through her. Eleanor's grip on the gavel faltered. Can you believe it? And for the first time in her storied career, she hesitated, caught in a storm of disbelief. The room seemed to shrink around her, the walls pressing in as she tried to process the impossible. James, here, now, like this? James looked up, and oh, what a jolt! His expression was a raw mix of shock and resignation. Did he feel it too? Recognition flickered in those eyes, but he quickly looked away, his head bowing slightly as if ashamed to meet her gaze. The courtroom waited, breathless, hanging on her next move. Eleanor forced herself to speak, her voice trembling just beneath the surface. Mr. Anderson, you stand accused of assault and robbery. How do you plead? James's voice came out rough, gravelly, almost unrecognizable. Had life really changed him that much? Not guilty, Your Honor, he said, and her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She wanted to stop everything, scream out, "What happened to you, James? How did we end up here?" and demand answers to questions that burned in her soul. But her role as a judge demanded composure, didn't it? Proceed, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. How did she manage that? As the prosecutor began their opening statements, Eleanor's mind raced faster than a Louisiana thunderstorm. This wasn't just any case, oh no, this was James. And somehow, she had to figure out how to separate her past from her present before it was too late. Could she even do that? The courtroom blurred around her as her mind drifted far away to a time long before her black robes and the gavel in her hand became her life. She and James had grown up on opposite sides of Hammond, Louisiana, divided not by miles but by the unspoken, ironclad rules of their segregated town. Her family's house was a modest one-story with a white picket fence, picture perfect, right? While James's family lived in a weathered home at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by endless fields that stretched toward the horizon. Their friendship? An anomaly, a beautiful defiance of everything around them. She remembered how they met. Oh, what a day that was. An accidental encounter at the edge of a creek, where she'd wandered too far from her own backyard, barefoot and curious. James had been fishing, his line tangled in the reeds, frustration etched on his young face. She'd offered to help, her small hands untangling the mess, and that simple gesture, can you believe how small it started, turned into years of secret adventures and shared dreams that lit up their world. "Eleanor," he'd said one night, lying on the grass beside her under a sky bursting with stars. "Can you see it? You ever think about leaving this place? Like, really getting out, going somewhere? People don't look at us funny just for sitting together." She'd laughed then, a carefree giggle, brushing off the idea like it was nothing. But James wasn't joking. Oh, how serious he was. Even as a child, he saw the world for what it was, a place that didn't always make room for people like him, didn't he? Their bond deepened despite the whispers, the sideways glances, the outright disapproval from both sides. How did they keep going? But the pressure was always there, lurking like a shadow, a weight neither of them could shake off no matter how hard they tried. Then one day, oh, how it still stung, it all ended. It was the summer before high school, the air thick with heat and possibility, when Eleanor's father caught them sitting on the porch together, just talking like always. His voice had been cold, sharp with authority, slicing through the moment. "Eleanor, get inside now." She'd hesitated should she have fought back, glancing at James, who stood frozen in place, his eyes wide with something she couldn't name. "Go on," he'd said quietly, his voice tinged with resignation. Did he know it was over? "I'll see you around." But they hadn't seen each other again, not really. Her father forbade her from going near James. Can you imagine the heartbreak? And soon after, James's family moved away, vanishing from her life like a dream she couldn't hold on to. Eleanor threw herself into school, her ambitions a lifeline pulling her far beyond the town of Hammond. She went to law school, chasing dreams of justice and fairness. Big dreams, right? But she never forgot the boy who taught her what courage looked like, not for a single day. Now, sitting on the bench, she wondered, oh, how she wondered, what had become of James after she'd walked into that house and closed the door on their friendship, leaving him behind. His record showed a series of arrests for minor offenses, petty theft, loitering, nothing that screamed a violent nature, right? But then again, how much of someone's life could you see in a few cold lines on a rap sheet? The prosecutor's voice snapped her back to the present, sharp and insistent. He was describing the alleged crime. Listen to this. James was accused of assaulting a store clerk during a robbery at a convenience store in Baton Rouge. The clerk had suffered minor injuries, and the cash register had been emptied. Sounds brutal, doesn't it? James was picked up a few blocks away, the cash allegedly still in his possession, caught red-handed. Or was he? Eleanor studied James as the prosecutor spoke, her eyes searching his face. His posture was slouched, his hands clasped in front of him like a shield, but his expression was unreadable. What was he hiding? Did he really do it? Or was there more to the story than what the prosecution claimed? Oh, how she needed to know. The courtroom adjourned for a lunch break finally, a moment to breathe, giving Eleanor a chance to gather her scattered thoughts. As she returned to her chambers, her assistant, Margaret, approached with a hesitant expression. Could she sense something was off? "Judge Hayes, are you okay?" "You seemed a little distracted," Margaret asked, her voice soft with concern. Eleanor hesitated. Should she spill everything? Would it be unprofessional to admit that she knew the defendant, that he was part of her soul? Instead, she shook her head, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, just a lot on my mind." But she wasn't fine. How could she be, when the past she'd buried so deeply was sitting just a few feet away, waiting for her judgment, staring her in the face like a ghost? She couldn't escape. The courtroom was packed when the trial resumed. Can you feel the buzz? Reporters scribbled notes furiously. The clerk shuffled papers with a rhythm all her own. And the prosecutor, a sharp-faced man named Richard Powell, was ready to deliver his case. Oh, he meant business. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Powell began, his voice firm and commanding, "this case is about violence, pure and simple. It's about a man who walked into a convenience store and, without provocation, attacked an innocent clerk before stealing the cash register contents. The evidence will show that James Anderson is guilty of this crime, mark my words. Eleanor felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Ouch. That hurt. The prosecutor's tone was clinical, detached, as if James were nothing more than a name on a docket, a faceless villain. She glanced at James, poor James, whose gaze remained fixed on the table before him, locked in his own silent world. The defense attorney, Lisa Porter, rose to present her opening statement. Here we go. She was young but confident, with a voice that carried across the room like a beacon of hope. The prosecution would have you believe this case is straightforward. Think again. My client, James Anderson, has maintained his innocence from the start. Yes, from the very beginning. We will show that there is more to this story and that assumptions made on the night of the arrest do not hold up under scrutiny. Watch and see. The first witness was called to the stand. A store clerk who'd been working on the night of the incident. Nervous, wasn't he? He described seeing a man fitting James's description enter the store, argue with the cashier, and then lunge over the counter. Dramatic, right? His testimony was detailed, but something about it felt rehearsed. Didn't it seem a little too perfect? Lisa's cross-examination was surgical. Oh, she was sharp. Mr. Chambers, you stated that the man who attacked the clerk was wearing a red hoodie. Is that correct? Yes, the witness replied, nodding quickly. Did you see his face clearly? Not really. It was dark, and he had the hood up. Lisa nodded, pacing slightly, building the tension. So you're saying you couldn't definitively identify the individual who committed the assault? Well, no, but no further questions, Lisa said, cutting him off like a knife through butter. Eleanor noticed James shift slightly in his seat. Did you see that? His shoulders squaring as if the exchange had sparked a tiny glimmer of hope in his weary heart. Oh, how she hoped he felt it too. The next piece of evidence was a surveillance video from the store. Here it comes. The footage was grainy and poorly lit. Why is it always like that? Showing a figure in a red hoodie entering the store. The prosecution argued that the person in the video was James. Case closed, they thought. But the quality made it difficult to discern any identifying features, really. How could they be so sure? As the video played, Eleanor studied it intently, her eyes narrowing. Could this truly be James? The figure moved quickly, grabbing at the counter before disappearing off-screen, gone in a flash. The footage ended abruptly, leaving an unsettling gap in the narrative. Where's the rest of it? Oh, how it gnawed at her. That uncertainty, that missing piece. James's defense was based on an alibi. Can you believe he had to fight so hard just to prove where he was? He claimed he'd been walking home from a friend's house at the time of the robbery, just minding his own business under the Louisiana stars. But here's the kicker: his friend, the one person who could back him up, was too scared to testify. Fear of retaliation from the community kept them silent. How unfair is that? Lisa, his fierce attorney, argued passionately that the lack of a willing witness didn't negate James's innocence. Why should it? But the jury's expressions? Oh, they hinted at skepticism, their faces tight with doubt, as if they'd already made up their minds. As the trial wore on, Eleanor felt the weight of her position pressing down on her like a storm cloud, ready to burst. She was meant to be impartial, a pillar of fairness, right? But how could she be when every moment dragged her back to their childhood? The boy who'd once been her closest friend, her confidant, was now a man fighting for his freedom, and she, of all people, was the one tasked with determining his fate. Can you even imagine the turmoil churning inside her? When the court adjourned for the day, finally, a break. Eleanor lingered at the bench, her fingers tracing the edges of the gavel as if it could anchor her racing thoughts. Oh, how she wanted to talk to James, to sit him down and shout, "Even what happened to you, James? Where did it all go wrong?" But she knew she couldn't, could she? Any contact outside the courtroom would jeopardize the case and her career. As she watched James being escorted out of the room in shackles, the clinking metal echoing in her ears, Eleanor's resolve wavered. Oh, how it shook. She'd always believed in the justice system, trusted its ability to reveal the truth, hadn't she? But for the first time she wondered, her heart sinking, if the truth was something it could ever truly grasp. Was it all just an illusion? The courtroom buzzed with quiet murmurs as the trial reached a pivotal moment. Here it comes. It was the defense's turn to present their case, and Lisa Porter called her first key witness, Officer Daniel Harris, the arresting officer. Talk about a game changer. Eleanor leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing. Could this be it? This was where the cracks, if any, might begin to show, and oh, how she hoped they would. Officer Harris, a burly man with a gruff demeanor, took the stand, his broad shoulders filling the space. Lisa approached him with deliberate calm. Watch her go. Officer Harris, she began, her voice steady. You were the one who apprehended my client, correct? That's right, he replied, his tone clipped short and sharp. You stated in your report that Mr. Anderson was walking 2 blocks from the scene of the robbery when you detained him. Is that correct? Yes. And what led you to believe he was the suspect? Harris shifted in his seat, uncomfortable, and said he matched the description, a black male, mid-40s, wearing dark clothing. Lisa's eyebrows raised slightly. Did you catch that? Dark clothing? But the suspect in the video was described as wearing a red hoodie. Quite a difference, right? Did you find a red hoodie in Mr. Anderson's possession when you searched him? Harris hesitated, oh, the tension, and admitted no, but he could have discarded it. Lisa took a step closer, her voice sharp now. Could have? Did you or any other officer conduct a search of the surrounding area to locate this supposed hoodie? Harris's jaw tightened. Oh, he's cornered. No, we didn't have time. He was apprehended quickly. Lisa pressed on, relentless. So, to clarify, you arrested my client based on a vague description without physical evidence linking him to the scene? The officer's silence roared louder than any words. Can you hear it? Eleanor's gaze flickered to the jury. A few members exchanged uncertain glances. Did they feel the doubt too? Lisa wasn't done. Oh no, she was just getting started. Officer Harris, do you recall if Mr. Anderson said anything at the time of his arrest? He protested, said he was innocent. And did you consider investigating his claim, give him a chance? Or did you assume guilt based solely on his appearance? Harris's face reddened, caught red-handed himself. I followed protocol, he muttered. Protocol, Lisa repeated, her voice dripping with skepticism. Can you believe this guy? No further questions, Your Honor. The courtroom buzzed again as Harris stepped down, his credibility visibly shaken, crumbling right before their eyes. Eleanor's heart pounded bam, 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 because this was more than just a trial now. It was a reckoning, not just for James, but for a system that seemed way too eager to condemn him without a second thought. The defense's next move was unexpected. Talk about a twist. Lisa introduced an expert witness, a forensic analyst who'd reviewed the surveillance footage. Here we go again. The analyst explained, calm and precise, that based on the height and build of the individual in the video, there was no definitive way to confirm it was James really. How could they be sure? And get this, the timestamp on the footage had been altered. Can you imagine the shock rippling through the room? It raised huge questions about its reliability. Huge. The prosecutor tried to dismiss the testimony as conjecture. Nice try. But the jury appeared unsettled, their faces shifting. Did you see that doubt creeping in? A shadow of uncertainty crept into the room, and Eleanor could feel its weight pressing down. Oh, how heavy it was. As the day drew to a close, finally, James was given the chance to testify on his own behalf. His moment. Lisa had warned him of the risk, scary stuff, but James insisted, determined to speak his truth. He stood, chains clinking softly as he approached the stand. Can you hear the sound? His presence quiet but powerful. His voice, though low, carried a raw sincerity that hit like a punch. I've made mistakes in my life, James began, addressing the jury directly, straight from the heart. I taken wrong turns, trusted the wrong people who hasn't, but I didn't do this. That night, I was walking home, minding my own business, when the cops stopped me. They didn't ask questions, they just decided I fit the bill. His voice cracked slightly. Oh, the pain. As he continued, I've been fighting my whole life, fighting to be seen as more than what people assume about me. But this? I'm tired, exhausted. I just want the truth to matter, don't we all? Eleanor's throat tightened. Ouch. That hurt, as James sat back down, his words hanging in the air like a desperate plea not just for justice, but for humanity itself. She glanced at the jury. Look at them. Their faces a mix of emotions. Doubt, empathy, uncertainty. Were they feeling it too? This was it, the turning point. The truth was no longer confined to evidence or testimonies. It was a battle of conscience, a struggle against the crushing weight of prejudice and assumption. Can you feel the stakes? Eleanor knew her role wasn't just to uphold the law. Oh no, it was to interpret it in a way that served true justice, nothing less. The final day of the trial dawned heavy with anticipation. Can you taste it? The closing arguments were delivered with precision sharp as a blade. The prosecutor leaned on the circumstantial evidence, urging the jury to trust the system's process. Trust it. Really? Lisa, though, begged, for the jury to see beyond the surface, to consider the holes in the case and the humanity of the man on trial. Yes, his humanity. Eleanor listened intently, her face impassive, but her mind racing. Round and round it went. Her role was clear. She couldn't sway the jury, could she? But she'd have the final word if their verdict left room for interpretation. The burden of ensuring justice weighed heavily on her. Oh, how it pressed. The jury deliberated for hours, and the courtroom emptied and refilled as people stretched their legs or whispered among themselves, nervous energy everywhere. James sat quietly, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. Poor guy, not looking at Eleanor since the first day. And who could blame him, really? Who? What could she possibly say to make any of this better, anything at all? Finally, the bailiff announced the jury had reached a verdict. Here it comes. The room fell silent as the foreperson stood, a piece of paper trembling in her hands. Can you feel the tension? In the case of the state of Louisiana versus James Anderson, we find the defendant. The pause was unbearable, agonizing. Not guilty. Oh, the relief. The room erupted, gasps, murmurs, even a few cheers, and Eleanor tapped her gavel, restoring order. Calm down, everyone. James's shoulders sagged as if a weight had been lifted, finally free, but his face remained unreadable. He'd won his freedom, but oh, at what cost? Eleanor addressed the court, her voice steady. How did she keep it together? The jury has spoken. Mr. Anderson, you are free to go. Court is adjourned. As the courtroom emptied, Eleanor lingered behind, watching James sign his release paperwork, freedom in his grasp. For a moment, she thought he'd leave without a word, would he? But then he turned and approached her. Oh, her heart skipped. The room was nearly empty now, just a few clerks tidying up and Margaret gathering files. Quiet at last. James stopped a few feet from the bench, his expression guarded, wary, maybe. You don't owe me anything, he said quietly, soft but firm. But I'd like to know, why didn't you say anything? You knew me. Eleanor felt her throat tighten. Ouch again, the words catching like thorns. Because I couldn't, could I? I had to be fair. If I'd said something, it might have jeopardized the case. James studied her, his face a mix of hurt and understanding. Did he get it? Fair, he repeated, bitter. That's the thing, Eleanor. The world's never been fair. Not for people like me, never. She nodded slowly, her gaze dropping to the polished wood of the bench. Shame stung. You're right. Oh, you're so right. I wish I'd done more back then, fought harder. I wish I could have done more now. James sighed, the tension in his posture easing slightly. Relief? We were kids. We didn't know any better, did we? But you know now, don't you? I do. Eleanor said, her voice firm, resolute. And I'm sorry, so sorry. James gave a faint nod acceptance, then turned and walked away, his back straight, as he disappeared through the courthouse doors, gone again. Eleanor sat alone in the empty courtroom, alone with her thoughts. The weight of his words pressing on her like a stone. She'd upheld the law, yes, she had, but the trial had revealed a deeper truth. Justice wasn't just about verdicts and evidence, oh no. It was about the lives shaped by systems far larger than any one person, massive, unyielding systems. For Eleanor, it was a wake-up call, loud and clear. A reminder that her position wasn't just a seat of power, but a platform for change, real change. As she left the courtroom that evening, the fading sun casting long shadows across the courthouse, steps beautiful yet haunting, Eleanor made a silent vow. She couldn't change the past, no way, but she'd do everything in her power to ensure the future held more than hollow promises of fairness. Damn right she would. It'd be hard, maybe even impossible, but she owed it to James and to herself to try with all her might. Oh, how this story tears at my heart and lights a fire in my soul. It's a gut-wrenching reminder of how deeply flawed our world can be, how lifestyles and social views shape destinies in ways that scream injustice. James and Eleanor's tale isn't just a courtroom drama. It's a blazing spotlight on the brutal reality that where you're born, who you know, and what you look like can chain you to a life of struggle or lift you to privilege. I'm furious, yes, furious, that James, a man who once dreamed under the stars with a friend, could be so easily discarded by a system that doesn't care to see his humanity. How dare we let fear and prejudice dictate who gets a fair shot? And Eleanor, oh, Eleanor, her journey hits me like a tidal wave of guilt and hope. She climbed from a segregated town to a judge's bench, chasing justice, but at what cost? I feel her anguish, torn between duty and the aching pull of a past she couldn't save. It's a wake-up call, damn, right? It is that we can't just sit back and accept protocol when it crushes lives. I believe passionately, fiercely, that we've got to fight for a world where fairness isn't a hollow word, where kids like James don't lose their futures to unspoken rules or lazy assumptions. This isn't just their story, it's ours. I'm sick of seeing people judged by their skin or their struggles instead of their hearts. We need change, real, messy, hard-won change. Eleanor's vow to try harder. That's my vow too, because if we don't, who will? Let's make the future burn bright with justice, not fade into shadows of regret.